In the hallowed halls of martial arts, where discipline and respect are paramount, a single, unexpected challenge shattered the routine of a Thursday evening, revealing a truth no one present could have anticipated. The sharp scent of liniment and sweat hung heavy in the air of the martial arts academy as Master Thorne, a formidable figure in his gleaming black belt, addressed the lone janitor. "You there, cleaning? How about a quick demonstration?" he called out, his voice echoing with an almost theatrical arrogance. "I bet you've never witnessed a true display of skill in your life, have you?" Mr. Silas, who had been meticulously mopping the polished floor, slowly straightened up. At 42, he was new to the academy, having worked there for only 3 weeks, typically arriving after the students had departed. This evening, however, an advanced training session had extended beyond its usual hours. "I wouldn't want to inconvenience you, Master Thorne," Mr. Silas replied calmly, resuming his work on a stubborn scuff mark. "Just finishing up here so you can get back to your practice." Master Thorne let out a booming laugh that reverberated through the vast space. "Everyone, observe. This individual is too apprehensive to even step onto the mat." The 8 students present chuckled nervously, some clearly uncomfortable with the burgeoning tension. What Master Thorne failed to grasp was that Mr. Silas had spent the past 2 decades striving to obliterate a profound past. 20 years had passed since he last stepped into a professional arena, an accident having irrevocably altered his life. 20 years of guarding a secret, unknown even to his teenage daughter. "Come now, man," Master Thorne pressed, approaching Mr. Silas with a condescending smile he often used to intimidate newcomers. "Just a small demonstration. I highly doubt you even understand the concept of a basic guard. Let's show my students the stark difference between someone who dedicates their life to martial arts and someone who merely cleans the facility." Mr. Silas felt a familiar stir within him, a dormant strength awakening after years of quietude. His gaze briefly met Master Thorne's, and for a fleeting moment, an unspoken recognition passed between them, causing the instructor to instinctively recoil a step. "Just an educational exhibition," Master Thorne insisted, his voice now betraying a flicker of uncertainty. "Nothing overly serious, merely to illustrate to the beginners why reverence for martial arts is crucial." Mr. Silas set the mop bucket aside and slowly rose. His movements possessed an unusual fluidity, unexpected from someone who had ostensibly never engaged in such training. Around the academy, the students paused their exercises, sensing a significant shift in the atmosphere. "All right," Mr. Silas finally stated, his voice as calm as a placid lake before a storm. "But when we are finished, you will apologize to everyone here for turning this sacred space into a spectacle." Master Thorne laughed, though the sound was noticeably forced this time. "Apologize? My friend, you'll be the one apologizing to the floor when you make its acquaintance." What none of those present knew was that Mr. Silas had once been known as Silas the Silent Storm Vance, a 5-time world mixed martial arts champion. He had retired at the peak of his career after a tragic accident that claimed the life of his closest friend and training partner. Since that day, he had sworn never to fight again. But some promises are destined to be broken when one's dignity is on the line. The Unveiling. Master Thorne adjusted his black belt with an exaggerated flourish, clearly relishing the attention. "Everyone, gather around. You are about to witness a practical demonstration of the inherent hierarchy within the martial arts world." Mr. Silas observed as the 8 students formed a semicircle around the mat. Some appeared eager, others visibly uneasy. A young woman, Miss Chen, her hair pulled back in a disciplined bun, whispered something to her classmate, who simply shook his head in disapproval. "Observe, everyone," Master Thorne continued, gesturing dramatically. "Here we have a prime example of someone who never grasped that certain places are appropriate for certain individuals. Elite training facilities are not for, well, you understand." Mr. Silas felt that familiar pang in his chest, identical to the one he had experienced 2 decades prior when he heard similar disparaging remarks about fighters who didn't fit a preconceived mold of a champion. The crucial difference was that now, at 42, he had learned to transmute anger into a force far more potent than any physical strike. "Master Thorne," Miss Chen interjected timidly, "perhaps we could continue our regular training?" It's getting late. Miss Chen, Master Thorne retorted sharply, cutting her off. Are you questioning my pedagogical methods? Sit down and observe. You'll gain more insight in the next 5 minutes than in a month of conventional training. Mr. Silas noted Master Thorne's deliberate use of Ms. Chen's full name, a clear assertion of authority. He also recognized the fear in her eyes, the same fear he had seen in his own reflection 2 decades ago, waking in a cold sweat, haunted by the memory of the accident that took the life of Mr. Julian the Hammer Hayes, his best friend and training partner. Julian had died because of him, it was that simple. A series of punches Mr. Silas had thrown with excessive force during a sparring session. Julian fell, struck his head awkwardly, and never regained consciousness. The investigation concluded it was an accident, but Mr. Silas knew the truth. He had lost control due to the immense pressure and the racial slurs hurled from the audience that night. So, janitor, Master Thorne sneered, now circling Mr. Silas like a predator, how about demonstrating to my students how not to perform a basic guard? Or is that too complex for someone whose primary skill is pushing a mop? Laughter rippled through the academy, but Mr. Silas remained unmoving. His eyes closed briefly, and for a moment, he was transported back to that Las Vegas arena, hearing the very same taunts that preceded the tragedy that forever altered his life. What's the matter? Are you apprehensive? Master Thorne pressed, continuing to circle Mr. Silas. Or will you merely stand there like a stationary object, as you do with your squeegee all day? That's when Master Thorne committed his first crucial error. He lightly pushed Mr. Silas on the shoulder, a seemingly innocuous gesture, yet one laden with the arrogance of someone who had never faced genuine repercussions for his actions. Mr. Silas absorbed the push without so much as a tremor. His feet remained anchored to the ground like ancient tree roots, and Master Thorne felt as though he had attempted to budge a solid stone wall. The instructor's arrogant smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Interesting, Mr. Silas murmured, more to himself than to Master Thorne. It's been a while since someone attempted to provoke me in such a manner. There was a subtle shift in Mr. Silas's voice that altered the entire atmosphere. It wasn't a threat, nor was it anger. It was the unnerving calm of someone who had navigated far darker valleys and emerged profoundly transformed. Master Thorne, unable to decipher the warning signs, doubled down. Did you hear that, everyone? He finds it interesting. Perhaps we should illustrate the difference between mere contemplation and actual expertise. What Master Thorne failed to comprehend was that every humiliating word and gesture was awakening something in Mr. Silas that had lain dormant for 2 decades. Not rage, nor a thirst for vengeance, but something far more perilous, the crystal-clear recollection of his true identity when he stopped concealing it. Ms. Chen watched the scene with escalating discomfort. There was something about the janitor's breathing, the almost imperceptible tensing of his muscles, that reminded her of the documentaries she watched about apex predators, the profound calm before an inevitable strike. Last chance, buddy, Master Thorne announced, now visibly irritated by Mr. Silas's lack of reaction. Either you accept this demonstration like a man, or I'll call security to escort you out. And guess what? You'll also lose your job. Mr. Silas slowly opened his eyes. When his gaze met Master Thorne's, the instructor felt a shiver trace down his spine, as if he had inadvertently roused a formidable beast he'd mistaken for a harmless creature. All right, Mr. Silas finally stated, his voice low but imbued with an authority that instantly silenced everyone present. But when we are finished, I want you to explain to your students why you transformed a place of learning into a spectacle of humiliation. Master Thorne laughed, but this time the sound was undeniably nervous. Explain? My friend, you'll have a lot more explaining to do when you're on the floor. What neither of them knew was that Mr. Silas had spent the last 2 decades not only fleeing his past but meticulously refining an emotional control that had transmuted his former destructive rage into something far more precise and devastatingly effective. Each fresh humiliation merely fueled a silent strength within him, a cold resolve that his former opponents knew all too well, but which Master Thorne was about to discover in the most unfortunate way. The revelation. Master Thorne adjusted his posture, clearly pleased with the respectful silence that had settled over the academy. His 8 students formed a perfect circle around the mat. Some were eager for the demonstration, others visibly uncomfortable with the unfolding situation. "Everyone, you are about to witness a lesson worth more than 6 months of training," Master Thorne announced theatrically, extending his arms like a showman. "The difference between those who dedicate their lives to martial arts and those who merely clean the very floor where real fighters walk." Mr. Silas stood motionless in the center of the mat. But something had subtly changed in his breathing. His eyes closed briefly, and for a moment, he was no longer in that academy in Denver. He was back at the National Coliseum in Las Vegas 22 years ago, hearing identical comments from the audience before his world title fight against Mr. Roman the Demolition Man Kirov. "Look at that short fellow," someone in the stands had shouted on that distant night. "I bet he won't last 3 rounds against a genuine fighter." Mr. Silas had won by technical knockout in the second round, but the victory had come at a steep price. The immense pressure of the bigoted comments had caused him to lose control during the subsequent sparring session, leading to the accidental death of Julian Hayes. "So, janitor," Master Thorne sneered, now circling Mr. Silas like a predator, "how about showing my students how not to execute a basic guard? Or is that too complicated for someone whose only expertise is pushing a mop?" That's when Ms. Chen could no longer remain silent. The 22-year-old purple belt in jiu-jitsu and master's student in sports psychology had dedicated the past 2 years to documenting cases of discrimination in sports for her thesis. What she was witnessing was valuable academic material, yet profoundly unsettling. "Master Thorne," she interrupted firmly, "may I ask a question? Why, precisely, do you believe it's necessary to humiliate someone who is simply performing their job?" The ensuing silence was deafening. Master Thorne slowly turned to Ms. Chen, his eyes narrowing with a mixture of surprise and irritation. "Excuse me, Ms. Chen, but who is conducting this class?" "You are," she replied calmly, "but that should not include demeaning someone under the guise of a technical demonstration." Several students exchanged nervous glances. No one had ever challenged Master Thorne in such a direct manner before. The instructor felt his face flush with a combination of anger and embarrassment. "Demeaning?" Master Thorne laughed forcefully. "This has nothing to do with that. It pertains to respect for the martial art and understanding one's place." Mr. Silas slowly opened his eyes. There was something in Ms. Chen's delivery, in the sheer courage of a young woman standing up to established authority, that reminded him of his younger sister, Ms. Vivian. She had possessed that same unyielding determination, that same refusal to silently accept injustice. Vivian had died at 17, a victim of a stray bullet during a neighborhood incident. Mr. Silas was competing in Japan when he received the devastating news. Another person he loved, lost while he pursued glory in distant rings. Another reason to abandon everything and vanish into the anonymity of a simple life. "Ms. Chen," Master Thorne said in a dangerously low voice, "if you cannot respect my teaching methods, perhaps you should seek another academy. There are establishments more suited to individuals with your particular mentality." The veiled threat hung in the air like acrid smoke. Ms. Chen felt a chill trace down her spine, but she held her ground. "My tuition is paid, Master. And I believe that everyone here deserves a learning environment founded on mutual respect, not humiliation." That's when Mr. Silas did something entirely unexpected. He began to smile. It wasn't a nervous or submissive smile. It was the slow, deliberate smile of someone who had just discovered a compelling reason to stop hiding. For 20 years, he had carried the crushing weight of guilt for 2 deaths indirectly resulting from his involvement in the fighting world. Now, witnessing a brave young woman championing principles of justice he had abandoned decades ago, Mr. Silas began to remember his true self. "Master Thorne," Mr. Silas said finally, his voice carrying a quiet authority that compelled everyone in the room to turn their attention to him. "The young lady is correct. This isn't about martial arts. This is about your attempt to inflate your own importance by belittling others." Master Thorne spun on his heels, his face crimson with indignation. "How dare you lecture me about martial arts? You wouldn't even know what a dojo is." Mr. Silas took a step forward, and something fundamental shifted in his posture. His shoulders squared, his center of gravity imperceptibly lowered, and his feet positioned themselves in a stance that any seasoned fighter would instantly recognize as flawless. "Actually," Mr. Silas said calmly, "I know precisely what a dojo is. And I know that this place ceased being one a long time ago." Master Thorne felt an inexplicable chill run down his spine. There was something in the way Mr. Silas moved now, the way he occupied the space, that awakened all of his self-preservation instincts. But his wounded pride would not permit him to retreat. "Enough talk," Master Thorne growled, assuming his preferred fighting stance. "I'll teach you respect the hard way." Ms. Chen watched the scene with growing apprehension, yet also with a professional fascination. She had documented hundreds of hours of sparring and competitions for her research, and something about the janitor's movements reminded her of the legendary masters she had studied in historical videos: the economy of motion, the controlled breathing, the serene presence that radiated contained power. Mr. Silas closed his eyes briefly, allowing 22 years of muscle memory to resurface. Every technique perfected, every victory secured, every lesson learned in the world's most brutal arenas. When he opened them again, Master Thorne was looking directly into the eyes of Silas the Silent Storm Vance, 5-time world mixed martial arts champion. "Last chance to apologize," Mr. Silas offered kindly, "to her, to your students, and to restore this place to a true learning environment." Master Thorne laughed, but the sound was nervous and strained. "Apologize? My friend, you'll be begging for forgiveness when you're on the floor." What Master Thorne couldn't discern was that Mr. Silas had already identified all of his technical weaknesses: the high guard that exposed his body, the tendency to retreat with his right leg first, the micro-movements of his shoulder that telegraphed his punches. 22 years away from the ring had not erased decades of refined technical analysis. Ms. Chen noticed that other students were instinctively backing away, like wild animals sensing an impending storm. Something in the room's energy had completely transformed, as if the air had become electrically charged before a lightning strike. It was when everyone laughed at Master Thorne's latest taunts that something unexpected began to take shape in Mr. Silas's expression. Not anger or a desire for revenge, but the calm determination of someone who had found a cause worth breaking a 20-year vow of silence for. Some of those present began to realize that something extraordinary was about to happen, even without fully understanding what their eyes were witnessing. Master Thorne assumed his favorite fighting stance, the one he had used to intimidate countless beginners over the years. Feet shoulder-width apart, fists clenched at chest level, weights slightly forward, the classic stance of someone who had learned martial arts in controlled environments against predictable opponents. Mr. Silas stood motionless for a few seconds, simply observing. His eyes scanned Master Thorne from head to toe, automatically cataloging every technical detail: the high guard that left his ribs exposed, the unstable base that compromised his balance, the excessive tension in his shoulders that telegraphed every move before it even began. "Still waiting?" Master Thorne sneered, hopping slightly on his feet. "Or are you just going to stand there like a stationary object?" That's when Mr. Silas did something no one expected. He began to move. It wasn't a dramatic change, just a subtle repositioning of his feet, a slight lowering of his center of gravity, his shoulders relaxing into a perfectly horizontal line. But to anyone who knew what to look for, the transformation was instantaneous and frightening. Ms. Chen felt a chill run down her spine. During 2 years studying sports biomechanics, she had analyzed hundreds of hours of footage of great fighters. What she had just witnessed was the transition from an ordinary man to a born predator, a change as subtle as it was devastating. "Interesting," Master Thorne muttered, his confidence wavering for the first time. There was something about the Silas now occupied the space that awakened all of his self-preservation instincts. Mr. Silas took a step forward, and Master Thorne instinctively backed away. The movement was so involuntary, so primitive, that several students noticed. A black belt retreating from a janitor. The power dynamic in the room had completely shifted. "Problem?" Mr. Silas asked softly, his voice carrying a quiet authority that silenced everyone. Master Thorne felt the blood rush to his cheeks. His reputation was being questioned in front of his own students. He couldn't back down now, even though every fiber of his being was screaming at him to stop and apologize. "No problem," Master Thorne replied, forcing a smile. "Just admiring your posture. Did someone teach you that on YouTube?" The joke fell flat. No one laughed. The tension in the room had become almost palpable. "Actually," Mr. Silas said calmly, "I learned it at a place called the Las Vegas National Coliseum. Perhaps you've heard of it." Master Thorne frowned. The name sounded familiar, but he couldn't place the reference. Las Vegas? What kind of weekend boot camp did you do there? Ms. Chen discreetly pulled her phone from her pocket and quickly typed Las Vegas National Coliseum Martial Arts. What she found made her blood run cold. This wasn't just any preparatory course. It was where the world's greatest MMA champions of the last 3 decades had trained. "Master Thorne," Mr. Silas continued, his voice still calm, "last chance. Apologize to Ms. Chen for questioning her right to speak. Apologize to your students for turning this place into a circus. And most of all, apologize to yourself for becoming precisely the kind of person that martial arts should teach you not to be." The offer of clemency hung in the air like smoke. Master Thorne could have chosen humility. He could have acknowledged that he had crossed a line. He could have preserved what little dignity he had left. Instead, he attacked. Master Thorne's first punch was technically flawless. A fast, accurate jab, executed precisely as he had learned in the manuals. It was the kind of punch that succeeded against 99% of the people he had sparred with over the years. Mr. Silas wasn't in the 99%. The movement was so swift, so fluid, that half of those present couldn't even process what had occurred. Mr. Silas simply wasn't where Master Thorne's fist had been aimed. His body had slid to the side like water flowing around a rock. And suddenly, Master Thorne was off balance, his arm extended into thin air. "Nice try," Mr. Silas commented softly, already repositioned and perfectly balanced. "Clean technique, adequate speed, but you telegraphed the move with your right shoulder." Master Thorne spun wildly, trying to locate his opponent. How had someone moved so fast? "Beginner's luck," he muttered, more to himself than to Mr. Silas. The second attack came in quick succession: jab, straight, hook. 3 punches linked together with the precision of someone who had practiced the combination thousands of times. It was his favorite sequence, the one he used to conclude sparring sessions and impress beginners. Again, Mr. Silas simply wasn't there. This time, Ms. Chen managed to follow the movement. Mr. Silas had lowered himself slightly, allowing the jab to pass inches over his head. The straight punch found only air when he leaned back in an impossible curve. And when Master Thorne threw the hook with all his strength, Mr. Silas took a small step back, causing the fist to pass millimeters from his chin. "Interesting combination," Mr. Silas observed, still breathing evenly. "Works well against people who stand still, but you're leaving your left side completely exposed." After the hook, Master Thorne was starting to sweat. This wasn't normal. He had landed thousands of punches in his life, and now he couldn't land a single one on a man who had supposedly never fought before. "Stop dancing and fight!" Master Thorne shouted, launching an even more aggressive sequence. That's when Mr. Silas decided the demonstration had gone on long enough. Master Thorne's third attack, a desperate combination of punches and kicks, found only air once again. But this time, something different happened. When Master Thorne recovered after missing all his blows, Mr. Silas was inexplicably closer. "How?" Master Thorne whispered, realizing he had completely lost control of the distance. "Master Thorne," Mr. Silas said softly, now an arm's length away. "Do you want to know the difference between someone who learned to fight in academies and someone who learned in professional rings?" Before Master Thorne could answer, Mr. Silas did something that defied everything those present thought they knew about physics. Without appearing to use any force, without any sudden or aggressive movements, he simply touched Master Thorne on the chest with the palm of his right hand. Master Thorne flew. He wasn't pushed or knocked down. He was literally propelled backward as if struck by an invisible wave. His feet left the ground. He traveled nearly 2 meters through the air and landed on his back with an impact that made everyone in the room gasp. The silence that followed was absolute. Master Thorne lay on the floor for a few seconds, staring at the ceiling, trying to process what had happened. There was no pain, just the irresistible force of someone operating on a level completely different from anything he had ever known. "That," Master Thorne muttered, trying to get up, "that's impossible." Ms. Chen had stopped breathing. In 2 years of studying martial arts, she had never witnessed such a controlled and devastating display of power. There was no brutality, no anger, just the clinical application of a technique she had only seen in legends. "Actually," Mr. Silas said calmly, reaching out to help Master Thorne to his feet, "it's quite simple once you understand leverage, timing, and energy transfer. Principles I've learned over a 22-year professional career." Master Thorne ignored the outstretched hand and stood up on his own, his legs still shaking. 22 years professional career in what? You don't understand who he is, do you? Ms. Chen answered, her voice almost a whisper. Everyone turned to her, still holding her cell phone with the results of her search. On the screen, dozens of articles, photos, and videos confirmed what her instincts had already realized. Silas Vance, she read aloud, also known as the Silent Storm, 5-time world mixed martial arts champion, considered one of the best technical fighters in history, retired undefeated after a 22-year career, following an accident that resulted in the death of his training partner. The impact of the words hit the room like a bomb. Master Thorne felt his face go pale as reality set in. He had challenged a living martial arts legend. He had publicly humiliated someone who could have knocked him out with a casual move. Five-time world champion? Master Thorne stammered, all his arrogance evaporating instantly. Mr. Silas nodded silently. I retired at 29. Since then, I've been working whatever jobs I can find. Cleaning, maintenance, simple jobs, simple life. No spotlight, no cameras, no need to prove anything to anyone. The transformation in Master Thorne was instantaneous and painful to watch. The arrogant man was gone, replaced by someone who finally understood the magnitude of his ignorance. I didn't know, Master Thorne whispered. If I had known. If you had known, would you have treated me with respect? Mr. Silas interrupted gently. But would you still have humiliated some other janitor? Another worker who had no credentials to defend himself? The question cut deeper than any physical blow. Master Thorne realized that Mr. Silas had pinpointed the root of his true problem, not ignorance about his credentials, but the fundamental arrogance that led him to believe he could humiliate people based on their professions. Ms. Chen stepped forward, her voice firm. Master Thorne, for 2 years, I have trained at this academy out of respect for your experience. But what I witnessed today was not teaching. It was bullying disguised as instruction. Other students began to murmur in agreement. The revelation about Mr. Silas had completely changed everyone's perspective on what they had witnessed. Mr. Vance, Master Thorne said finally, his voice laden with a humility no one there had ever heard before. I sincerely apologize to you, to Ms. Chen, and to everyone here. I have no excuse for my behavior. Mr. Silas nodded, accepting the apology with the same grace with which he had mastered the physical confrontation. Appreciated, Master Thorne, but apologies are only the first step. The question is, what are you going to do differently from now on? Master Thorne looked around the room, seeing his students with new eyes. Some seemed disappointed in his behavior, others clearly reevaluating everything they thought they knew about respect and hierarchy. I'll change, Master Thorne promised. It'll take time, but I'll change. That's when Ms. Chen asked the question that surprised everyone. Mr. Vance, would you consider teaching again? Because I think we could all learn a lot more from someone who understands that true strength comes with responsibility. Mr. Silas smiled, the first genuine smile anyone had seen from him that night. Maybe, but not to teach fighting techniques. To teach something much more important, that respect isn't earned with belts or titles, but with character. 3 months later, the academy had undergone a profound transformation. Silas Vance was no longer merely the janitor. Ms. Chen, with the gym owner's support, had convinced him to accept a position as an instructor specializing in advanced techniques and martial arts philosophy. Master Thorne, stripped of half his students in the immediate aftermath of the incident, found his reputation in the martial arts community in tatters. The video Ms. Chen had discreetly recorded and shared across social media, showing a black belt humbled by a man presumed to be a mere janitor, ensured his public disgrace. Sensei Vance, Ms. Chen remarked after a class focused on respect and humility, "Thank you for teaching me that true strength doesn't need to be ostentatiously displayed to be recognized." Mr. Silas smiled, organizing the training equipment. "The best lesson I can impart is simple: never judge someone by their profession or their outward appearance. Everyone carries stories within them that can utterly surprise us." Master Thorne continued teaching at a smaller, less prominent academy, now operating with a humility born of public shame. He had learned, through the harsh crucible of experience, that arrogance comes at a significant cost. Sometimes, justice arrives quietly, like a silent storm that transforms everything in its path without a single sound. Silas Vance had not sought to destroy his opponent. Instead, he had demonstrated that true greatness emanates from character, not from titles.